So, the reflection this morning, as Laura stated, there's been a lot of anxiety for some of us, depression, just a feeling of even sometimes hopelessness for different things that are going on in the world. So, when I was thinking about this reflection, I kept coming back to thinking, I want to be sane when the whole world seems to be crazy. So, in an OCD spasm of cleaning my entire house before I could sit down to even write this, I thought about more what struck me as important to impart. And you see, I've been struggling for a while. I'm going to be very open with you, my congregation family, that I was recently diagnosed with MDD, major depressive disorder, and PTSD from trauma I experienced growing up and continuing into adulthood, actually. And of course, all the things, bills, the continuing disregard of minority groups by others, the institutional disregard of minority populations. Populations are people, same as you and me. And I hurt when I see land that is surely home and food sources to wildlife being ripped apart, build yet another self-storage building. I just don't understand the materialism that stuffs homes so they can't use their garage to park their car in. And then on top of that, they need extra storage to keep things. Yeah, I know these places can be useful to some for short term between the homes and like, so there's a valid reason for them. But a lot of people, we just have too much stuff, me included. And I work for Children's Minnesota, and I see kiddos being hospitalized because family members around them didn't vaccinate. And it just makes me angry, sad. So I get it. I get the sadness, the anger, the feelings of near hopelessness that sometimes all of us maybe likely feel. I do. And I grieve for the planet and for all living things and for us. Anyone could say a coincidence, except I don't really think coincidences always are coincidences. I believe that often things happen for a reason. So I started thinking that I can give you ideas of how I relax, how I find calm in the storm of stress. And then I thought, name some of these stresses, them. And I want to lead us in thinking what each of us perceive and feel as stress. Because we don't all share the same stresses. And each of us experiences stress differently. We all feel it. And when we do, especially long-term stress, we carry it. We carry it in our bodies and minds and hearts, literally. And then I think, to lead us in finding within ourselves how we each have pathways to calm, because we do. And beloved, we all need and deserve that calm. So this is my acknowledgement slide. This represents to me some of the major ongoing stresses that I feel, and maybe you share too. And there is a lot to be stressed about on an individual level, perhaps, and generally. These things are, especially during those times, that we need to practice self-care. Except I know, adding something to your day is really hard. I mean, who's time for that these days? We all perhaps hold personal stressors. Maybe it's a conflict within our family or a friend. Maybe it's our job, or lack of a job, or maybe the economy. Maybe it's just everything.
Pamela, you're cutting in and out quite a bit. So see if you're closer, but we really are losing sentences at a time at this point.
Oh dear.
Yeah, try it from there.
I think it's happening when you're getting a little louder, so the mic may cut out.
I will try to modulate my voice.
Thank you.
So basically, there's a lot to be stressed about, and I want you to take a moment and acknowledge those stresses for you, because naming them, knowing them can help us, not banishing them, at least diminishing their effect on us. So raise your hand if you feel stressed or anxious these days. Go ahead. Really raise your hand. A lot of hands being raised. So you thought you were going to sit back and listen and watch this. Ha! So we all share the stress coming from some direction. We know it, we feel it, we've just acknowledged that, but what does it do to us? Well, it causes us to release cortisol into our bloodstream, and cortisol releases adrenaline. Adrenaline, my friends, readies us to take flight or to fight whatever it is that's threatening us. And do no doubt, stress threatens us. Stressed for long periods of time, our bodies are in that alert state for that long, ready to get away or fight off a threat. What does that do? Well, it depends on the person to some degree and how you process and react to stress. It depends on our resilience. Each person experiences and reacts to stress individually. It's sort of like the pain. Feel pain on a personal level. What causes pain to me at a 7 feels like a 3 to my dad, for instance. Same with stress. I can only tell you how I deal and don't deal with stress, what it does to me, and when I am aware of it, what I do to help relieve it. I can only tell my story, but I am guessing you have an idea of what stress does to you as well. It doesn't just affect us. We share our stress. We don't always realize it, but we project stress in our body language sometimes. And because we aren't as sharp and may have issues with memory while stressed, we are not fully present, not fully there or here. What that means is that we are also not fully present with whatever we're doing, whoever it may be it that home or school or our jobs, volunteering, whatever it is we do, working on a hobby. It causes many of us to be a little less patient and a lot more irritable. I know I get cranky. So maybe we yell at our pet or our partner. Maybe we break into tears easily. Maybe we can't focus. Squirrel? So we don't do as good a job as we could, be it at home, school, or job. Maybe we don't want to do things. Get home, be comfortable. Maybe we give up. It's difficult. Stress affects how we relate to everything and everyone around us. So as I start to share with you some of the things that I do, or know I can do, because I don't always do them when I should, I want you to think of the fact that you too have ways of relieving the stress you may be feeling these days. We all have those ways. And if you relieve stress, you're more relaxed, more able, and it makes you a pleasant person to be around for others. Animals communicate in more ways than with our voices. We talk with our bodies, and we watch one another, and we can see and feel stress from one another. It's kind of a communicable disease, stress is. Masking won't protect us from stress. So let's go ahead and talk about some ways to deal with stress. Some are familiar, some are cliched, but I hope to get you thinking about how you can deal with whatever stresses are affecting you. So I practice yoga when I remember, when I think about it, which in itself can be reducing as you take note of your breath, just as we did earlier this morning. And in yoga, you stretch your muscles and move joints that may be affected by stress. And as I do yoga, I do it in preparation for sitting. And by that I mean I practice meditation. And yoga prepares my body to be still. What meditation does or can do is it helps you get your body in a relaxed state. You breathe slower, more rhythmically. And when you do that, blood pressure drops. Did you know that master yogis can actually control their blood pressure and their body temperature? They've actually done experiments at Harvard with yogis who are monitored for vital signs and sometimes EKGs. So it's actually a known fact. So some of us are all into the warm fuzzies. Some people need facts. Well, that's a fact. I know as a horse owner that when my horses are high-headed, that is when they are scared or nervous or unsure of something, their heads go up. Ears are alert and forward or flicking around sensing. Their eyes get wide, often showing the lights. They may stamp and have their bodies ready to do whatever might get them safe. Well, that state means they've gone to instinct and may not recognize their training. They may react, and horses are big. Around them or on them. So I ask them to put their heads down. I gently push their head with my hand on their poll, and I talk soothingly to put their head down. Head down, Maya. Head down, Kip. And when they do, they lose, if not all of their nervousness, at least some of it. Their instincts, and for lack of a better word, emotions, follow their body. And this works with us too. If we can calm our body, our minds usually follow that. Yoga and meditation does this. This is how that can work. It's called a practice because it's not, we practice. And when our thoughts go back to, what am I cooking for dinner? What do I need to do to prep my yard for winter yet? I just let that thought be there. And then I gently pull my mind back to the present. This is why focusing on our breath can help you meditate. This is why you can picture that flower opening in your heart and that light, because you can't think of more than one. You occupy your mind with following and working with your breath, or with that mantra, whether it's a picture or a statement, and that in turn calms your blood pressure and heart rate. Wow, huh? You can focus on a word, a phrase, a mantra. It doesn't really matter what that is. Mine is so hum. The sounds of the Hindu mantra meaning I, she, he, or that. It identifies myself. And for those who believe in such, that could be the creator or the spirit, the mystery, the love. What that tone says is, that is in me. It is, to those who believe this, in all of us. And doing that is very powerful, believe it or not. Meditation, prayer, thinking whatever, whoever, can be a reminder for gratification. Thinking of the word gratification can be your mindfulness. Meditation is a really good way to relax, to relieve stress. It can help you sleep better. It can help your mind focus and be quicker. I actually use it whenever I answer questions, or like today, or facilitating in class. I actually meditated before the service because I was nervous. Now, some will say I can't meditate. Well, you could. Everyone can. But you have to practice before it feels natural. But okay, I get that. Stuff you already know helps you relax, or helps get your mind off whatever is causing you stress. Stop focusing on the stress and focus instead on something else. Some kinds of stress relievers really are just distractions. It's a distraction. So think about that as I show you some slides of how I manage your stress. And try to think like anyone. Habit doing doesn't always come easy, I know. But we can all do this. So this is my bathtub. I can only tell my own story. And for me, a nice hot bath, maybe with a book of ice water at hand, maybe some calming music, that's one way I relax. Play with my cats. Animals are known to help relieve stress on people because with a pet, we're not interacting with our minds. Again, distraction and warm feelings of a relationship with another being. I am lucky and blessed to have 2 horses as part of my family. I love to spend time with them. Horses are said to live in the present for the most part, and they take their cues from their herd around them. I know when I'm with my horses, my stress affects them. They do that high head thing sometimes, not because they themselves feel threat, but they feel my stress. So I consciously slow my breathing when I'm around them. I don't have to ride them to enjoy them and to benefit. I get them besides relaxation, but I also get distraction from my thoughts, and I get exercise with being with them. So going for a walk with your dog can do much the same thing for you if you have a dog, or as I said earlier, playing with a cat. Maybe it's letting a bird sit on your shoulder and interact with you, playing with a pet bunny or hamster. Watching fish swim in the tank is calming. That's why dentists have fish in their lobbies. I like to read. Books are a form of escape for me. I'll read just about anything. I have a cookbook collection. I read cookbooks front to back. I like to help animals. That means volunteering with Rough Start Rescue sometimes. This past winter, some of you may have remembered, I cured a fox with mange. I just saw that fox the other evening, actually 3 nights ago on my way home. It was totally grateful that I was able to help that. It made me smile as I watched it trot across my neighbor's yard in the evening. I rescued from a milkweed that was going to be mowed down at the side of the road. I fed it milkweed leaves as a caterpillar, and then it formed this chrysalis, and when it was ready to hatch, I brought it outside, and it made its way to a nearby pot of flowers and flew away. Sometimes relaxing isn't about, and stress relief isn't about relaxing. Sometimes it's about doing. Doing service makes some of us happy, and it helps make us feel like we have contributed to something in a positive manner. I know climate change and habitat loss are big things. Those things really distress me. I can't make much of a change in the overall big pictures, but I can do small things that help. I can make it those beings who cross my way. Whatever your skill is or your talent, whatever the cause is, they continue to, yes, even joy, much less help distract and dissipate stress. So, like I said, stress reduction isn't just about relaxing and soothing our minds. Sometimes it's doing something about that which causes us stress. Of course, the Women's March. Boy, being there made me feel strong. I was grateful for all the others also marching. I felt filled. Feel filled. What gives you at least contributing to a solution or an awakening? Hobbies, avocations can also work to distract from and dissipate stress in our lives. Again, the mind can't really hold more than one focus at a time. We can use that stress. I cook and bake. Cooking for me is a creative activity, so it engages my mind, and for me it's also a way I give to others. So it satisfies one of my love languages, which is giving. And if you are not familiar with love languages, I recommend reading the 5 love languages. Some people knit, or paint, or maybe you do woodworking or carving, maybe you write, maybe you sew, or like me, make jewelry. In many of these pursuits, there's a rhythm to some of that work. Kneading, rolling out dough, the click of knitting needles, the sanding of wood. Those rhythms are soothing. The sound of the rhythms can be soothing, even meditative. Think of the rhythmic click of knitting needles. Now, consider what activities in your life bring satisfaction and likely for a while, some relief from stress. Also gratification at creating something. Creative outlets is that I'm a photographer. Taking photos is a way for me to be creative, and again, it takes my mind away from stress. I focus on the photos, pun intended. The thing with photography is that these days, almost all of us have a camera. It's on your phone, and start walking and looking around you. You don't even necessarily have to go anywhere. Look in your yard, your gardens, a local park. Walk down a sidewalk and see what there is to show detail, pattern, beauty in. That butterfly that you see in that lower left corner, it's on the side of my car. That's pollen dusting everything. It was just a moment I caught. I was outdoors. I took that with my cell phone. Those pictures in kind of sepia on the right, those are a neighborhood near Loring Park. I just took those out walking. Oh, another thing I do for me is I take at least one break every day, and I walk in the woods in my yard, and then I sit on this bench, and I look over the Crow River and park on the other side. This, to me, is a form of meditation even. I just take it in, my body relax. It grounds me and soothes my spirit. So nature's still there. I can take comfort in what I do with my space around in it. I breathe it in, hear the birds, the river below perhaps, and I find solace and serenity. I put beauty in my space around me. I bring nature in. I have small rock piles everywhere in my home. I have leaves and milkweed pods, branches and vases, and sometimes flowers I rescue from the frost. Creating a space where you feel safe and that you can relax, that is basically your space, can be helpful for most of us. This picture is my nest. This was when I was with my ex. He built this for me. It was a place where I went to write, to read, to just be. My new home is now my eyrie. That's my nest upon the bluff. The entire space is a hug around me. Make a space around you, wherever and whatever that is, that feels good to you. When we surround ourselves with whatever is pleasing to us, it helps us feel safe and more relaxed. I am so grateful for the home around me and the woods and the bluffs upon which I sit. I know nature doesn't do it for everyone. Green things and trees and nature is known to help relax and help with healing, but being able to just see it out a window in a hospital room or for your office or house, that's enough for some of you. Well, there are lots of things you can do in a suburb or in the city, wherever you are, in whatever environment you prefer. You can play an instrument, or you can sing music, therapeutic. Because again, you're thinking of the notes, the pitch, the rhythm. You're doing something musical with others is especially rewarding. It's a feeling of being in part with others. And that, by the way, is my brother. and my brother used to run marathons. And he told me that he found marathons and running to be extremely therapeutic because of that feel of his feet pounding on the pavement one after another. It was almost like a drum beat. And he said sometimes he almost felt like that was in the same beat as his heart. Religion and faith is sometimes a balm in times of stress, whatever that means to you. Prayer, meeting in congregation together as a community like we do these mornings. These things are all stress reducing. For some, picturing their happy place works. Maybe it's a beach or someplace you traveled. Where have you felt happy? Peace. Think of that right now. These are places that you can return to in your mind at any time. So, some practical stuff, a couple pointers for specific stressors we all likely share these days. I've certainly heard it. If Zoom is fatiguing for you, try a couple things. Turn off the mirroring of your picture. Don't look at yourself. When we meet with people physically, we can't see ourselves. It's really unnatural. And what it does is it makes us too aware of how we are appearing. We actually are not even paying as attention to everything else because we're focused on what we're looking like. So try to make and when you do have your video going, try to make your video more than just a headshot. And if it's possible, ask others to do the same. We communicate with our bodies, not just our faces and our voice. It can really help reduce the effort it actually takes to communicate with one another if we can see one another. And I know that I follow the news. I like to keep up in current events, but sometimes I get overwhelmed. Sometimes I look at the news and headlines every morning and I scroll through CNN and NPR, and I listen to NPR, and then I might go online, or some people watch TV and watch the news, but doing so can make us overwhelmed. So if you find yourself doing that, stop. Like I said, I think it's good to be in touch with current events. I think we all need to, but you don't have to consume it so much. Multiple times a day, like I sometimes do, consumes you, consumes me, and it consumes you with stress. So I have no idea what this sign really says. It was in Poland, but it is a recognizable symbol that says, don't do something. It says no. Stress. At least sometimes, by doing whatever it is that makes you feel better. I know something works for you. An avocation, volunteering, hobby, a form of movement. Maybe you meditate as I do, or differently than I do. Think about what you know makes you feel good, brings joy, makes you smile to yourself, makes you feel gratitude or accomplishment. Whatever that is, make time for it in your life. Life is short for stress to be so much a part of our lives. Some stress is natural, but it shouldn't be ongoing. Now, give yourself a hug. If you are with other people and you like hugs from others or giving them, hug them. And it's okay if you're not a hugger. I know some people aren't, but do me a favor. Do this. Hug yourself right now. For me, for you, for all of us. Because you matter. You know what? We need to give ourselves hugs more often. For not only ourselves, but each other. You can't help others, care for others, do for others if you are depleted. So wrap your arms around yourself and squeeze. I don't know about you, but that feels good. With my permission to give yourself a self-hug whenever you need it, or just feel like it. There are no limits on hugs. They won't run out, and they don't cost money. I hope you can take something from this. Find your happy place, or whatever it is that helps drive some of that stress away. Brings you a little calm. As I said, we each know how we carry stress. We also, if we think about it, know what brings us joy or calm or distracts us from thinking about what stresses us. Make time for that. You, the world, is a better place with less stress. Deserve it. I see and appreciate all of you. Namaste.
Another great one of our short hymns that can be used as a spiritual practice to remind us to breathe. So just when we thought we couldn't go on any longer, we were asked to continue to be separated from one another, live with caution, stay isolated for the sake of safety, and the church is staying closed at this point as Anoka County rates of COVID continue to run very high. So in preparation for this morning, I read a book called Healing. Oops, it's a little glary there. Radical Self-Care by a friend of mine, Dr. Joy Lewis. As you can see, the cover's orange. She wears orange all the time. It's a color that taps into her strength and her beauty. That book in particular focuses on people of color and African Americans who come with the trauma, a historical trauma that lives within their bodies and continues into our current day. But so many of the things she said just rang true for me. Here are some of her words. Personally, I feel like someone put a dimmer on when it used to be a very bright light. But every time I try to adjust it, it just won't work. I tell myself, that's just how it is now, and that's the new normal. Everything seems to move in slow motion, and it takes me triple the time to get things done. I'm learning. Oh, I see I'm unmuted and Bruce has been heard instead. So here we go. Let me begin again. You can see me holding up books and things, but not hearing anything. So just when we thought we couldn't go on any longer, we were asked to continue to be separated from one another, to live in caution, to stay isolated for the sake of safety. And even the church is staying closed because the Anoka County risk rates for COVID continue to run really high. So in preparation for this morning, I read this book. Here it is, Healing. It's a book of radical self-care by a friend of mine, Dr. Joy Lewis. She focuses particularly on African Americans because she's African American herself, and she's speaking about historical trauma. But there's also an element about living today that really rings true for all of us. So here are a few of her words. She says, personally, I'm feeling like somebody put a dimmer on where it used to be a very bright light. But every time I try to adjust it, it just won't work. I tell myself that's just how it is now, and that this is the new normal. Everything seems to move in slow motion, and it takes me triple the time to get things done. She says, I'm learning, and I offer this to you. Little by little, it gets better and a bit more bearable. Joy is an advocate of self-care, and she talks about how being selfish and caring for your mind, body, and spirit is essential to live a life that is full and to work to better this world. And she reminds us that joy and pain run from the same faucet. She says that in order to be in the present moment, we need to stay awake for every aspect of life, the joy and the pain and the heartbreak and the excitement, the boring, the unexpected, and the transformative. It's important, it's easy to appear to be awake, but to still be dead inside. And she points to the fact that some of us drink and we veg out on social media or Netflix, we smoke, we work too much, we shop. Maybe we use drugs or food as one of our ways to medicate ourselves. It was funny, even this morning, I was listening to a podcast and this woman was talking about having been in the house with her husband for all of these months and how it was all just wearing a little bit thin. And she was taking us outside for a walk, reminding us that sometimes to be alone in nature and reminded of living things, grass and trees and birds, is essential. This month's theme is living intentionally. And intention is really needed in order to make our way through this time and other times of our lives. Just as Pamela shared, Joy really recommends 4 practices. One is something to get you grounded. She uses meditation, but there's other ways to get grounded. The other is to find some way to practice mindfulness or a way to get present with yourself. I personally use breathing to get present. And then she talks about emotional liberation, using therapy or friends, ways that we can work through our trauma and our depression and move towards healing, even with some of those pieces obviously continuing. And then conscious movement. She's really into getting going, doing something with your body. And as Pamela said, we know that that matters. There's really no end to this journey. It won't end when COVID ends. This journey of intention and healing and self-care is cyclical, and there's not an ending, it's a continuum and an expansion. She equates it with a marathon, which, obviously is not a sprint. And she goes into the great details about all that exists to support runners during a marathon. If you've ever watched one and been in one, you know what she's talking about. There's water stations and there's paramedics, there's run marshals, there's roadblocks for cars, there's porta potties, and there's people on the route cheering us on, and food and beverages at the end. She said, that's during normal times, we're just running this marathon, and that no one can run a marathon alone, unless of course you're Amy, who's been doing that on the side in her own hours and clocking them, because that's what's happening right now with COVID. But really, to do our lives, we need that support around us. And personally, I find a congregation, a place such as this, as one way to get some of those elements into our lives. Because it's important to temper what's around us, because everything around us goes through our hearts and our minds and our bodies. I love how she tells this story about being told as a young kid, which I'm sure many of you were, that she had to eat everything on her plate, and she had to stop and think about others who didn't have what she had, and that, she was fortunate to come from a good place and to not waste anything. But she said, the thing that bothered her is she realized that everything was going to become waste anyway, and it didn't need to travel through her body first. She didn't have to be a human garbage can, she said. And she talks about her Aunt Mosi, who said, here it is. The important thing is to learn how much to put on your plate in the first place. She talks about how the real need is to not waste food and to not eat more than one needs. And the same is true for negative energy, self-doubt, and insecurity. They all have to be guarded. They don't have to travel through your mind, body, and spirit first. If you don't like the idea of that biological metaphor, she also uses one of a bank, using the metaphor of a bank account, that we all need to pay attention to our balance. We need to pay attention to the deposit, those things which fill it up, and the withdrawals, those things which take away from it. And she cites community and daily practices as a way to fill one's account. And she recommends paying attention to withdrawals so you don't overextend yourself. I was going to share some ideas that she shares in the book, but actually I'm always more curious to hear from all of you. Before I open up the floor for just a little bit because of time, I just want to share one confession, and that is around this time in congregational care. I so reflect back on the past and right now and wish things looked differently. We had an amazing congregational care team when we were in person, and honestly, as the COVID surrounded us, that team itself needed care. And I know that for me, my own energy, that bank account is feeling like it needs more deposits to simply keep operating. So I've been working hard to keep my reserves in place so that I can stay on this metaphorical marathon until we are together again. But please, I do want you to know before I turn it over to you that you are loved by me and others in this community, and that if you are feeling down or you want to think about ways to create practices that will ground you or help feed your spirit, to not hesitate to reach out to me or another congregant. Please don't wait for us to call you if you think it would be helpful. We used to be with one another. We could see each other's faces. We could read each other's body language. We could notice if something was amiss, and all of that is gone now. And the isolation is real for some of you, for many of us. But I do want you to know that breaking that isolation is just a text or a call or an email away. Do it however you may need to. I will leave you with one little thing that Joy said in terms of a way about being in community, about lifting your spirit and lifting the lives of those around you. She says there's 3 things you need to do. The first is to answer the door. So if someone knocks, if you get a call this week from someone at church, if you get an email or a text, please answer the door. Let them in. Show them some hospitality and love. The second thing she says is to knock on somebody else's door. So if there's somebody you haven't seen, whether it's here or at lunch or at the coffee house or other places, consider picking up the phone and calling them or texting them or sending them a card. Knock on somebody else's door. A card, not a car. Knock on somebody else's door so that they know you are thinking of them. And the last thing she says is get out and play. Hence, we're singing happy birthday during the service. Find ways to lighten your heart and find ways to play, even if they're just tiny ways, so that our hearts can sing together and we can bring joy and laughter and love into the world. So I would actually like to open up just for a few minutes. And I know that Pamela cited some things. I'm curious about if folks have other ways they have found to fill their reserves, to stay grounded, to calm their spirits, and to enhance the love and energy that they bring into the world. So I'll let Chad, our facilitator, look around a bit and see if anybody comes forth, because I think it's always helpful to hear what other people do. Sometimes it's easy to get in a rut.
Go ahead, Janice.
Pamela mentioned grounding, and one of the grounding techniques that I use, which is actually a practice you can learn about on the internet, is in the summertime, late spring, early fall, when it's not too cold. I just go outside and stand on my little grassy patch in front of my townhouse and look to the skies and sing Spirit of Life 3 times. It's a way to bring good thoughts down and negative things further down into the ground and give back to the earth what it needs to keep going.
Thank you, Janice. Really, some of our short ditties are really a great way to connect with that sense of self and sense of the world. Thank you.
Good, Marie.
2 things. I walk, and the motion really helps me stay focused. When I go off, I can get right back. The other thing is our wonderful dog that we have now. Oh my God. I can sit in the chair with her for an hour and it calms me way down. She's wonderful.
Thank you, Marie. From Norma and Marilyn in chat, we have Norma likes to sit in her chair in the garage at her townhouse and talk to people who walk by. Go ahead, Katie.
So one of the things that I've been doing since kind of early in the pandemic is I started doing a guided meditation, which I was never attracted to that for whatever reason. I didn't like to put headphones in and have someone else speaking. And my sister-in-law mentioned an app that she was using that she liked, and I tried it, and I've been doing that nearly daily. And I can't always say that I explicitly feel different. I'm just trusting the practice that over time it helps. And the other thing, thinking about grounding, one thing I do off and on, even when it's cold, I like to go and sit out on my deck. I'll wrap up in a blanket and have a cup of tea. So just being outside. And sometimes when I let the dog out at night, I've taken to not just letting her out, but also stepping outside and looking up at the sky, what I can see of it, even though it's in the city. And those 2 things, again, they're things that I suppose I think I heard somewhere that like going outside and looking at the sky was somehow helpful. And so sometimes I do that.
Remembering there's a universe. And Katie, I think that do you want to say what app you're using?
It's almost not. It's called 10% Happier. And the name of it almost made me not try it. So
yeah, I use Insight Timer. I think there's always a benefit of having another voice other than that committee in our heads.
Yeah.
That reminds us to breathe and to do something different. So
All right, I've got Richard next with his hand virtually raised.
I find that when I'm feeling down, even though the last thing I feel like doing is calling an old friend that I haven't talked to for in a long time, but when I do talk to somebody that, like yesterday, I talked to somebody I do not even remember the last time I talked to him. Actually, he was the best man in our wedding, but I haven't talked to him for decades, and it was really heartwarming.
Knocking on those doors, Richard. That's excellent. Yeah, really nice. Thank you and happy birthday. I think Polly said something, and then we'll probably move along unless you see somebody else.
Yeah, Polly's got swimming laps helps me stay in the exact moment. Mindful practice also helps me feel refreshed, and that happy tired.
Happy tired. Richard, we'll put the apps in the, Roger, we'll put the apps in the chat box. I'm gonna just close this section with a reading. You will hear it again in a moment, and then we will sing a hymn together. This is once again from my friend Joy. She says, "Dear one, even if the world feels as if it is crashing around you, know that it is radical for you to even consider that you are worth taking care of and that you matter. Pausing is about knowing that, because you do exist and you are worth it. Pausing is an intentional decision, and it offers powerful energy. Pausing is about knowing, being, and remembering that you are worth exquisite care, love, and light." We'll sing now a hymn that is normally in our teal hymnal, number 1053, "How Could Anyone?" Once again, we'll show you the words on the screen.